Now, this is a little earlier in the morning than I normally do these, so we'll see how this goes. I just had my first sip of coffee for the morning, but I needed to go on a quick rant because I was on Elon's platform this morning and I saw a thread from Chris Saliza. If you're familiar, you already know that this is going to be good. And it just really it pissed me off that he wrote it, but it's not surprising that he wrote this. But I thought it was important to make mention of why this is a very stupid recommendation that he makes for Democrats and Democratic strategists. So I'm going to read the tweet that thread real quick, and then we'll break it down. So he says, let me make the case for why Democrats should not keep talking so much about Kilmar Abrego Garcia. The Dow Jones dropped almost 700 points on Wednesday. The NASDAQ dropped more than 500 points. The head of the Federal Reserve said inflation was likely to go up because of Donald Trump's tariffs. Did you hear about that? Any of it? Probably not. Because the lead story on every homepage and on every hour of cable TV was Garcia. The simple fact is that there can only be one dominant news story at a time. And right now, it's clearly the legal and political fight over the deportation of Garcia. Now ask yourself, which issue is better politically for Democrats, immigration or tariffs? It's very clear to me that the answer to the question posed above is tariffs. The reason Donald Trump got elected was because he promised he would defeat inflation and lower the price of everyday goods. But his tariff policies have done the exact opposite of what he promised on the campaign trail. We are in a trade war with China. The head of the U.S. central bank said on Wednesday inflation is likely to go up. Trump spent the last 3 weeks playing defense on the issue. According to calculations by G. Elliott Morris, Trump lost an average of 7 approval points following Liberation Day 2 weeks ago. And now, while nothing really has changed from the last week, we are still in an escalating trade war with China. Inflation and recession fears are still on the rise. Stock market is still all over the place, et cetera, et cetera. No one's talking about it. Democrats have to show discipline as they seek to rebuild from the political low where they find themselves, out of power at every level in Washington. Now, this is just, I'm sorry, super, super stupid. For one, he says that the stock market dropped almost 700 points on Wednesday and the NASDAQ dropped 500 points. And the Federal Reserve said inflation's likely to go up. And he says that no one's heard about that, but that's not true. There's been plenty of coverage of the stock dump over the last 2 weeks. But it actually doesn't matter that much whether or not you're talking about it today on April 17th of 2025 when your election is in November of 2026. It also doesn't matter if you spend your entire time talking about tariffs. It doesn't matter if you spend your entire time talking about the fact that Trump hasn't lowered prices. You should be able to walk and chew gum. I know that's hard for Democrats a lot of times, and I know it's hard for Democrats to do the brave thing a lot of times because sometimes the brave thing means going against, what a poll told you from 3 months ago or 6 months ago, or what your perceived reason for losing the election is. But let's be very clear about what happened to Joe Biden. It's not that the mainstream news was talking about egg prices because they wanted Joe Biden to lose. They were talking about it because real people were feeling it. They were talking about inflation because real people were experiencing it. It was so apparent that everyone knew it was real. You can't miss it because everyone buys things. Everyone goes to the grocery store. Everyone gets a paycheck. Most people get a paycheck. Everyone can tell when things get more expensive. Is your coffee more expensive? Are your groceries more expensive? Is gas more expensive? Is your plane ticket more expensive? Everyone can tell when the economy is bad because people lose jobs. The stock market goes down. You have less money in your retirement account. You have less money in your 401k account. You have less money in your Roth IRA account. Everyone can tell because money is real, the economy is real, and you can't bullshit the economy. Trump is going to try his darndest to bullshit the economy, but it's the one thing that you can't fake. Democrats should talk strategically about the economy in the last 6 months before the midterm elections. Sure, I absolutely agree. Kitchen table issues and the economy are going to be the driving factor of the midterms. Reason being, not because of Trump, not because of the MAGA Republicans, but because that's almost always the driving factor in American elections. Go back last, 70 years. There's a lot of data on this. It's almost always the economy. That hasn't changed. It's not going to change. And people are going to notice it whether or not you spend all day screaming about it. But to recommend that you spend all day screaming about the economy and not spending all day screaming about rendering someone who is afforded due process because they live in this country, and you didn't give them due process. You just sent them to a freaking concentration camp in El Salvador. That is a much more subtle yet serious violation of the rights of the people in this country. And that's something that does need to be explained to people. The economy doesn't need to be explained because everyone participates in the economy. Not everyone participates in constitutional law. Not everyone has a strong grasp of what civil liberties are and are not afforded to different groups of people who are in this country, whether they're citizens, whether they're green card holders, whether they're here on work visas, whether they're here illegally. There are different rules for everyone, but one thing that is afforded to everyone who is in this country is due process. And that is a much more nebulous term than egg prices. So it is something that requires a beating of a drum. It is something that requires Democrats going on TV. It's something that requires Democrats talking about it in op-eds on social media, going to CCOT and seeing the prison themselves and trying to help free this man to bring him back to our country. And he can be deported again after that. But he needs due process, because if we sacrifice due process for even one person, and if the Trump administration, if the president can get away with defying a Supreme Court 9-0 ruling, who said that he violated the rights granted to people in this country, and when the president is toying with sending American citizens to CCOT or to any other foreign gulag, that is a direct threat to the fabric of the United States. That is a direct threat to the rule of law. And I'm sure Chris Cillizza, if he's talking this much about the economy, is aware of U.S. Treasury bonds and the concerning trend that they've been on. Those bonds rely on confidence in the United States as a stable government, stable economy, and a place that you can safely do business and you're protected by the rule of law. As soon as the president starts blatantly violating the rule of law, then you're going to see economic impacts from that as well, because people will not trust us. There's a reason people prefer to do business with us historically than with China, because the United States government can't just turn around one day and say, I'm sorry, your factory is mine now because you used pronouns in your bio and I don't like you. The Chinese can do that. In America, you historically cannot do that. Turn around and take someone's factory. Turn around and cut federal funding to universities because they didn't bow down to you. These are violations of basic tenets of American society that need to be called out and need to be called out consistently. Remember, we are 18 months away from the next big election from the midterms. So the notion that we aren't talking enough about kitchen table issues and we're focusing on an issue that polls badly for us, I don't care. It's wrong what Trump is doing. It is illegal, and it sets a precedent for the United States to become a totalitarian state at the whims of Trump, who will be our king. You don't have to talk about economic issues and kitchen table issues if you don't have real elections to run in. I don't know if Chris Cillizza knows that. You don't really have to worry about talking about kitchen table issues in Russia because Putin is going to win the election no matter what. Same with Hungary. Same with every other fake democracy. That is the trajectory we are on. And so it is important that people who value lowercase l liberalism and value freedom and value democracy, is important that those people stand up and scream from the heavens right now. And I don't want to hear some guy behind a desk telling us that that's the wrong thing to do in the face of such monstrosity. Have a good morning.